We live in a world now where there's at least 3 meals a day. And then we've got companies selling bars and snacks in between. So the feeling of hunger, some people never experience hunger in their whole lives. It's really, really bad for them. What we actually found, my colleagues and I, across this field of longevity, is that when you look at, first of all, animals, whether it's a dog or a mouse or a monkey, the ones that live the longest, by far, 30% longer, and stay healthy, are the ones that don't eat all the time. Actually, it was first discovered back in the early 20th century, but people ignored it. And then it was rediscovered in the 1930s. Clive McKay did caloric restriction. He put cellulose in the food of rats so they couldn't get as many calories even though they ate. And those rats lived 30% longer. And we showed in 2005 in a science paper that if you have low levels of insulin and another molecule called insulin-like growth factor, those low levels turn on the longevity genes. One of them that's really important is called SIRT1. But by having high levels of insulin all day, being fed means your longevity genes are not switched on. So you're falling apart. Your epigenome, your information that keeps your cells functioning over time just degrades quicker. Your clock is ticking faster by always being fed. Okay? The other thing that I think might be happening by always having food around is that it's not allowing the cell to have periods of rest and reestablish the epigenome. And so it also is accelerating in that direction. There's plenty of other reasons as well that are not as profound, such as having low levels of glucose in your body will trigger your major muscles and your brain to become more sensitive to insulin and suck the glucose out of your bloodstream, which is very good. You don't want to have glucose flowing around too much. And that will ward off type 2 diabetes. In the past, our bodies were constantly fighting disease and deterioration throughout life. Even before birth, we're fighting against entropy. Things are falling apart. The aging clock that we can now measure begins at conception. But if you fast forward to now, our society is built on comfort. Most countries have enough food and shelter. We can sit down. We don't have to run away from predators very often. And this is a real problem because these longevity defenses that normally would be activated by being cold and hungry and running are lethargic. The body doesn't expend energy to defend itself unless there's a need for it. And modern society is the worst thing. We love comfort. It feels good, but that's the worst thing for long-term health. We need to trick the body into getting out of its comfort zone by doing these things we've talked about: eating the right foods, including foods that are stressed, eating less often. And as long as we have adequate nutrition, that's what we call it, intermittent fasting with adequate nutrition, or IFAN. This is another term we just coined. That allows the body to turn on these defenses without suffering long-term negative consequences. What's interesting, I find, is that even though we know the fridge is probably full with food, our bodies are not that smart. Our bodies don't get that message. And we can trick the body into thinking, oh my goodness, the fridge is running out of food, or the field or the forest is lacking in food. We better get to hunker down and survive. What are those things? You burn fat, you increase your metabolism, so you've got more energy to run around and find food. You become more alert because you've got to go find more food, and you defend your body against insults, whether it's incoming infections or diseases from within. And that's cool that we can trick our bodies, and it's not that hard. But the point here is that sitting down is bad for us. You atrophy, you have less muscle, which means your hormone levels, particularly testosterone, will go down, and you become, in pain. That's not a good thing. But ultimately, if you have not a lot of muscle in your hips, particularly, you can break your bones when you fall over, when you're older. And all of that means you need to get off your butt, stand up, even better, go for a walk, even better, go for a run or cycle to get what we call a hypoxic state going. Your body needs to suck in more oxygen, and that has remarkable health benefits. And what I think most people don't appreciate is that exercise isn't just beneficial for your fitness and for your vitality. It actually can stop diseases in their tracks. Exercise can slow down cancer. In fact, it can prevent up to 23% of all cancers from occurring. That's true for cardiovascular disease. In fact, it has an even bigger effect on that, 30% reduction just by doing moderate exercise every week. 50 minutes is sufficient. or 3 times a week with 10 minutes. All-cause mortality, right? So all-cause mortality is basically slowing down aging. That's a 27% reduction in the rate of aging just by exercising. And one way that we know for a fact to slow down the ticking of that biological clock is exercise.